In my last video, we talked about what is opera, a work of art that comprises many facets including drama, music, and stagecraft that is centered around the singing voice. This week, we are going to talk about the genesis of opera. How did it come to be? Why did it start in Italy? How was it created? Watch on to have all of your questions answered. Opera began in Italy around 1600. However, there were antecedents to the genre for hundreds of years beforehand. One of the sources for opera was Renaissance pastoral dramas, plays in verse with music and songs interspersed within the drama. It was a tradition derived from ancient Greek and Roman sources, with pastoral poems telling of idyllic love in rural settings or mythological figures. The first one to be staged was Angelo Polani's Favola d'Orfeo on the legend of Orpheus in Florence in 1471. Pastoral drama became increasingly popular in Italian courts through the 16th century. Their subjects, style, mythological character types, and use of music and dance were all adopted by the earliest opera composers. Another antecedent of opera was the madrigal. The madrigal started out as an unaccompanied song for multiple voices. It was one of the greatest genres of secular music in the Renaissance, with a flowering of activity, especially in Italy. Many composers at the time wrote madrigals and strived to use tone painting, or expressing the text in music, to express the emotion of every line of a poem. Let's hear an example of one of the most famous composers of the madrigal, Claudio Monteverdi, with a madrigal from his fifth book of them, Cruda Amarilli, or Cruel Amaryllis. With tight, dissonant harmony, you can hear Monteverdi tone painting about the cruel amaryllis. He included downward runs of 16th notes on the ah to mimic a sigh. In the same book as this madrigal, Monteverdi wrote a few solo madrigals, or pieces for solo voice and accompaniment. He also included some places of stile rappresentativo, Italian for representative style, which is the forerunner to true recitative. Let's hear an example of Monteverdi's stile rappresentativo from his seventh book of madrigals, Tempro la Centa.
Tempro la Centa, e per cantar gli onori di Marte, alzo talar lo stil e ma invan l'attento e impossibil par mi.
This excerpt is entirely different to the first madrigal because there is only one voice and a lute playing as accompaniment. The declamation is in the middle of song and speech, and it comprises of syllabic singing, one syllable to a note, for most of the line. There are some ornaments and some sections of melismatic singing, more than one note to a syllable, but the style is mostly single syllables to a note. The direct antecedent to opera was the intermedio, or a musical interlude on a pastoral, allegorical, or mythological mythological subject performed between acts of a play. The evolution of the intermedio was practical. Renaissance theaters lacked a curtain that could drop between acts, so something was needed to mark the divisions and suggest the passing of time. Often there were 6 acts performed before and in between a play's standard 5 acts. For important occasions, the intermedi could be very elaborate with choral, solo, and instrumental music, dances, costumes, and stagecraft. It is very easy to see how the intermedio can be the last stop to opera. These musical and theatrical genres provided the materials for the genesis of opera, but it wouldn't have happened without the interest of humanist scholars in reviving the ancient Greek tragedy. These scholars hoped to create the same emotional and ethical effects of Greek drama in their age by creating modern works using what they thought of as the same techniques. Their discussions, at first entirely theoretical, gave way to experiments that ultimately culminated in the first operas. Renaissance scholars disagreed on the role of music in the ancient Greek dramas. In one view, only the choruses were sung, and the rest of the play was spoken. However, the contrary view was that the whole of the Greek drama was sung, consisting of a single melody with or without accompaniment. The Florentine scholar that was the biggest proponent of this view, Girolamo Miei, read every surviving ancient work on the subject while working in Rome as a cardinal secretary. Miei communicated his ideas to the wider world through the Florentine Camerata, a circle of scholars and politicians that included Count Bardi and Vincenzo Galilei, theorist and composer, and father of astronomer Galileo Galilei. Count Bardi moved to Rome and continued the discussions about Greek drama in the context of interest about all of antiquity. Among the participants of these discussions in Rome were 2 artists that had participated in producing intermedi, poet Ottavino Rincini and composer Jacopo Peri. They were convinced that Greek dramas were sung throughout and decided to create a modern work using what they considered as ancient methods. Peri's setting of Rincini's setting of the pastoral poem Daphne was performed in October 1598 at Corsi's Palace. Only fragments of the music survive, but it was the first opera, a stage drama sung throughout, with music designed to convey the characters' emotions. This style was still being experimented with by composers of the day. A few years later, the first extant opera was performed as part of the marriage celebrations of Maria de' Medici, niece of the Grand Duke, and King Henry IV of France. The opera, Eurydice, was another Peri setting of Rincini poetry, but this time included sections by Giulio Caccini, who did not allow his singers to perform music by other composers. Both versions of the opera were published. Caccini's was more tuneful, recalling solo madrigals and arias, and Peri's was more speech-like because he strove for the stile rappresentativo, the intermediary between speech and song. In his preface to the opera, Peri cited the ancient Greek historians and tried to create a new way of singing that current historians believed was used for intoning heroic poetry in ancient Greece. The style was soon to be known as recitative style, the hallmark of opera. The first opera composer to be elevated to the repertory or collection of operas that are still in production today is Monteverdi of madrigal fame. His first opera, L'Orfeo, was commissioned by Francesco Gonzaga, heir to the throne of Mantua, and was produced there in 1607. It was modeled on Eurydice in subject and mixture of styles, but was more effective because Monteverdi drew upon his years of working with madrigals and solo madrigals, bringing more shape and contrast to the musical drama. The first opera composer to be elevated to the repertory or collection of operas that are still in production today is Monteverdi of madrigal fame. His first opera, L'Orfeo, was commissioned by Francesco Gonzaga, heir to the throne of Mantua, and was produced there in 1607. It was modeled on Eurydice in subject and mixture of styles, but was more effective because Monteverdi drew upon his years of working with madrigals and solo madrigals, bringing more shape and contrast to the musical drama. His expressive text setting and intense drama helped round out the opera to a form that has survived the ages. He used a larger number of instruments than Peri did for his opera, calling for recorders, cornets, trumpets, trombones, strings, a double harp, and several different continuo instruments. In addition to monody or solo song, Monteverdi included duets, dances, and ensemble madrigals to reflect the changing moods in the drama. Let's hear the centerpiece of the opera, Orfeo's aria Possente Spirito, or Mighty Spirit. Orfeo is trying to cross the river Styx, but the ferryman, Caronte, refuses to take him. Orfeo sings a flattering song to try and convince Caronte to take him across the river.
Possente Spirito, e
You can hear the organ playing sustaining chords that Orfeo sings over, ornamenting the simple line with trills. The strings interrupt occasionally to move the song along and to renew the harmony. By describing the ferryman in impressive language and using the ornamentation in the sung line, you can hear Orfeo trying to flatter the ferryman. Opera, from this beginning, spread first throughout Italy and then throughout the world. The first public opera house opened up in Venice in 1637, moving the production and performance of opera from a private sphere to a public one. From this point on, opera was an expression of the people, meant to be seen and commented on by the cultural elite and others. Thank you for joining me in this story of the genesis of opera. I had a great time putting this together for you. If you'd like to see my other videos, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. My bibliography for this video is on my website, dominiqueroyam.com, which is linked below in the description box. Join the conversation on social media. You can find me as Dominique Royam on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks so much, and see you in my next video.